On this Saturday night, mid-flight fright. The panel of a Boeing plane blows out midair.
One of the guys that was there, his shirt was sucked out and his phone was sucked out.
The first-hand accounts, the emergency landing, and the future of the fleet. Winter is coming.
In Nova Scotia, there's a thing with the weather. It's unpredictable.
Bracing for a winter wallop out east. And lining up for the long-awaited powder out west. After facing near extinction, how Africa's mountain gorillas have staged a comeback.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
Good evening to you. Thanks for joining us tonight. That what would happen if scenario some of us play out in our minds while sitting in the window seat happened last night on an Alaskan Airlines flight. An entire cabin panel was sucked out midair. The plane, a brand new Boeing 737 MAX-9 jetliner. Today, U.S. federal officials have ordered the immediate grounding of some of those aircraft. Here's a closer look at the hole left in the airplane. Somehow, no one was seriously hurt. 177 passengers and crew used oxygen masks as the depressurized plane made an emergency landing. Abigail Bimman has the first-hand accounts and how the frightening ordeal is renewing safety concerns about Boeing planes.
We just depressurized as we declared an emergency.
With a sudden door-shaped hole passengers describe as almost as big as a refrigerator, the Alaska Airlines crew member tells air traffic control the plane needs to return to Portland.
We have 177 passengers on board.
The plane was able to land safely with some wild stories from the air.
One of the guys that was there, his shirt was sucked out and his phone was sucked out.
I heard like a big bang. And I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I look up and the oxygen masks were hanging from the ceiling. And then I look to my left and there's this huge chunk, part of the airplane just like missing.
I heard a pop noise. I felt the wind come forward and then it came back. It hit me in the face. I was trying to make sense of what's going on.
It was a trip from hell.
The plane had just recently taken off. Passengers credit everyone still wearing their seatbelts for the lack of serious injuries. The piece of fuselage sucked away was a panel covering an optional rear mid-plane emergency exit. Saturday, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration issued a temporary grounding of 171 Boeing MAX-9s worldwide for immediate inspections. Boeing said it supports the decision and deeply regrets the impact of the event.
It puts a question mark on Boeing's production inspection, for sure.
This is just the latest in a run of problems for Boeing's MAX fleet. The MAX was grounded worldwide for nearly 2 years after 2 crashes blamed on cockpit software killed 346 people in Ethiopia and Indonesia. And just last week, Boeing asked airlines to inspect the jets for a potential loose bolt in the rudder control system.
I think for me, it's time for a new design and stop tweaking.
Aviation expert John Graddick points to Boeing's model of tweaking older models to bring new planes to market quickly as a potential issue. But still, he reassures Canadians they're safe to fly.
This is a safe airplane. The MAX airplanes are well designed. They're operated. There are thousands of them in the air.
No Canadian airlines have MAX-9s in their fleet. The Transport Minister's office tells Global News they're watching and waiting for the results of investigations by the FAA and Boeing. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
In Japan, safety experts are searching for the flight voice recorder after a deadly runway collision this week. Heavy machinery is removing debris from the severely burned Japan Airlines plane at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. Investigators are looking for crucial information on what caused the collision with a small Coast Guard plane on Tuesday, killing 5 crew members. All 379 people on the passenger plane safely escaped within 18 minutes of landing as the aircraft was engulfed in flames. And that Coast Guard plane, it was set to deliver aid to those affected by Japan's 7.6 magnitude earthquake that struck the country on New Year's Day. More than 120 people are now dead and more than 200 are still missing days after the quake leveled homes and wrecked infrastructure on the country's west coast. Despite wet weather hampering efforts, the search for survivors continues. In one area, crews rescued a 90-year-old woman trapped in a collapsed house for days. days. Around 30,000 people remain displaced, many staying in government shelters. Some have opted to sleep in their vehicles over fears of aftershocks. To the escalating tensions in the Middle East right now, Lebanese militant group Hezbollah has fired a barrage of rockets into Israel today. Israel retaliated swiftly, launching a series of strikes into southern Lebanon. Hezbollah fired up to 60 rockets into northern Israel, calling the attacks a preliminary response after the assassination of Hamas's senior leader in Beirut on Tuesday. The Iran-backed militant group's leader says his fighters destroyed a large number of Israeli vehicles and tanks. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinkin is in the region trying to calm those tensions as fears grow of a wider Mideast conflict. Blinkin met with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan today, emphasizing the need to prevent the conflict from spreading. Antony Blinkin also spoke about securing the release of hostages held in Gaza, expanding humanitarian assistance, and reducing civilian casualties. And according to the aid group Doctors Without Borders, the number of children that are being killed every day in Gaza since the outbreak of the war is well over 100. And today, after days of artillery fighting in the Palestinian territory and new evacuation order leaflets being dropped this morning in neighborhoods around the Al-Aqsa hospital, Doctors Without Borders said it took the difficult decision to evacuate its staff and their families from the area. A powerful winter storm is plowing through parts of the U.S. and Canada this weekend, unleashing snow and freezing rain along the East Coast. The system is sweeping through much of the northeastern United States today, and it's making its way to Ontario, where several weather advisories are in effect. It's set to hit Atlantic Canada tomorrow, and that's where our Vanessa Wright has more on how Nova Scotians are preparing.
The first major snowstorm of the season is marching east and packing a punch. Several U.S. cities are getting hit with heavy snow, the storm leaving behind chaos on its way to Atlantic Canada.
In Nova Scotia, there's a thing with the weather. It's unpredictable.
Environment Canada issued a special weather statement ahead of the storm's arrival on Sunday. Southern Nova Scotia could see up to 25 centimeters of snow, with 15 centimeters possible in western Halifax.
We typically apply salt and brine ahead of a weather event like this one. And then once the snow starts falling, crews will be out clearing snow as quickly as possible.
The timeline of what we're watching, especially along the south shore of Nova Scotia, it'll pick up as early as the morning hours on Sunday, intensifying for the afternoon and evening. 15 and up to 25 centimeters is possible, and the winds, the big weather story and concern, up to 70 kilometers per hour. We're looking at blowing snow across the region.
And while the snow is a welcome sight for local businesses that thrive on stormy weather,
the snow we get, it'll boost sales, and we'll see people coming in the door and going to the hills.
the conditions are unwelcome for some living rough this winter.
I wouldn't want my roof to collapse on me again. I didn't like waking up that way. It wasn't fun.
Emergency shelters are being set up in Halifax, Dartmouth, and Lower Sackville. Officials say Halifax Ground Search and Rescue will also be conducting wellness checks to several homeless encampments. Environment Canada says these types of storms can cause dangerous driving conditions, school closures, and of course power outages. As such, the city says residents play an important role in keeping obstacles off the sidewalks so operators can do their jobs as quickly as possible. Vanessa Wright, Global News, Halifax.
Winter finally arrived in Whistler, BC, as these skiers and snowboarders couldn't wait to hit the slopes. But wait, they did. Long lines stretched around the ski resort's Creekside Village, and as you can see, it could be seen from the highway. An abnormally warm winter has led to a lack of snow on the hills, but more snow and cooler temperatures are in the forecast for this week. And while we are seeing snow in some areas of Canada, it's the lack of it and the drier than average season we've just had that's causing concern in other areas for the agriculture sector. As David Baxter explains, many farmers are worried, even though the growing season is still months away.
Up here, at least up in East Kelowna, we usually have a foot of snow up here in the orchards.
But Okanagan Valley fruit farmer Manny Gill is left with bare, brown fields and fruit trees that won't sprout until the spring. Grapevines used to cover these fields, but the lack of snow put an end to that.
If it does get really cold, that snow creates a blanket. It keeps the roots warm, and then in the springtime when it melts off, it moisturizes the soil. 2 cold snaps in a row have killed off all the vines, so I ripped out everything this year, and I'm going to replant it to an orchard next year.
Gill isn't alone. As of November 30th, the Canadian Drought Monitor says 72% of the country is either abnormally dry or in a drought. That covers about 81% of Canada's farmland.
Winter has not happened yet. And here we are. I mean, the days are getting longer. I mean, we're clearly not to the dead of winter. We still have a month to go.
In the prairies, many fields depend on snowmelt to make moist spring soil. For sixth-generation cash crop farmer Ian Boxall, there's no need to worry quite yet.
Are we a little concerned about the lack of snow? Sure, but there's lots of time for us in Saskatchewan to get snow. We get some heavy wet snow in March, it'll make up for the other months where we didn't have any.
The East Coast is one of the few areas seeing more seasonal moisture, a welcome change after a spring drought last year, followed by heavy rainfall.
We see a lot of variability coming with the changing of the climates, and then big swings in terms of the weather events and rainfalls, temperatures, those sorts of things.
Between droughts, cold snaps, and storms, this wild weather can be devastating.
We're getting these major weather events that can cause crippling situations in various commodities.
Back out west, even though Gill plans on replacing dead vines with new fruit trees, he says it will be at least 5 years before they produce a crop.
Think of what you're going to plant, and in 5 years that might not be the right decision.
David Baxter, Global News, Ottawa.
Global Affairs Canada confirms 1 Canadian is dead and 2 others have been injured after a bus heading from Montreal to New York crashed on Friday. The deadly rollover happened about 260 kilometers south of Montreal in New York State. The cause of the incident is still being investigated. There were 23 people on the bus at the time of the accident, most of them Canadian. The gloves are off on America's insurrection anniversary. Coming up, how both leading candidates for president are using the January 6th riot as a rallying cry. And later, why one near endangered species is increasing in population.
The radical left Democrats rigged the presidential election of 2020, and we're not going to let them rig the presidential election of 2024. We're not going to let them do it.
That's the Republican frontrunner, former U.S. President Donald Trump, on the campaign trail in Iowa today, pushing the big lie on the anniversary of the January 6th attack when Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol. 3 years on from that attack, new polling suggests Americans are becoming more extreme and more divided in their views of the insurrection. It comes as Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election becomes a key focus in the 2024 campaign. Jackson Prosco reports.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen.
This is now effectively a riot.
The echoes of January 6, 2021 still hang over the U.S. Capitol. 3 years later, what really happened that day is increasingly disputed by American voters.
It's more than just people's memory fading. There's other things that are happening in terms of the information environment.
Over 1,200 rioters were arrested. Former President Donald Trump was impeached and indicted. You wouldn't know it from the way many Republicans talk about January 6th today.
He didn't break into the Capitol. He gave a fiery speech, but he's not the first guy to ever do that.
For the past 3 years, Trump and his party have run a coordinated campaign to rewrite history, using baseless conspiracy theories and outright lies.
I'll pardon peaceful protesters from January 6th, that the evidence increasingly suggested entrapment and government involvement.
That message has worked. Polls show that over the last 3 years, Republican voters have become less likely to believe that the attack was violent and less likely to believe that Donald Trump bears any responsibility for what happened. Less than a third of Republican voters believe Joe Biden was legitimately elected. 1 in 4 now believe January 6th was a setup by the FBI. 72% think it's time to move on.
There's an extremist movement that does not share the basic beliefs in our democracy.
In the 2024 presidential campaign, January 6th isn't being forgotten. It's a rallying cry, especially for Democrats.
In trying to rewrite the facts of January 6th, Trump is trying to steal history, the same way he tried to steal the election.
The attack is also an inescapable part of Donald Trump's campaign. He has been removed from primary ballots in 2 states for violating the so-called insurrection clause of the U.S. Constitution. Other states could follow.
Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. He's a threat.
Yet 3 years after he tried to overturn an election, Trump's support is as strong as ever. With so many Americans refusing to agree on what happened, experts warn it's not hard to imagine it could all happen again.
I think we have to take really seriously the idea that this might not have been a one-time event.
Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Ahead, why Canada's most popular NDP Premier is giving his province a break from fuel taxes. Manitobans had more than one reason to celebrate on New Year's Day earlier this week as the provincial fuel tax holiday came into effect. From January 1st until the end of June, the province's NDP government has temporarily lifted a 14-cent a litre provincial tax on gasoline, natural gas and diesel fuel. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stephenson spoke with Premier Wab Kinew about the pause and what it might mean for the federal carbon tax's future in Manitoba. Mercedes.
Farah, if the federal government's New Year's wish was for a 2024 without having to hear criticism about the carbon tax, well, that's not going to happen. While most of the critiques have been led by Conservative premiers like Alberta's Danielle Smith and Saskatchewan's Scott Moe, Justin Trudeau has also had to contend with a critic who it is much harder for him to dismiss, Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, who is a New Democrat and one of the most, if not the most, popular political leaders in Canada right now, according to the polls. In an interview with the West Block, Premier Kinew says the affordability crisis and post-holiday bills are mounting, and that means people need a break on carbon pricing. He says he's doing his part in giving Manitobans a break on the provincial fuel tax, and now he wants the feds to follow suit.
We know that people are coming out of the holidays. Those credit card statements are starting to arrive. And so on January 1st, we cut the provincial fuel tax on gasoline and diesel just to give people a bit of a break, because we know that along with healthcare, affordability is another major priority for Manitobans.
Two really interesting things there that you just said I want to follow up on. Would you like to see the federal carbon tax exemption extended to Manitobans?
I think that there's an argument that Manitoba is maybe one of the strongest cases you could make that the price on carbon should be revisited in our jurisdiction. And so, that's something that I'd like to work on. And it's definitely something that I know Manitobans would like to see some help with.
No sign of the federal carbon tax vanishing from the political debate in Canada, but a reminder to Canadians that the carbon tax is set to rise again in April. So expect to see more political hay being made of this issue in the new year. We'll have more with Wab Kinew on the West Block.
And as Mercedes mentioned, you can hear more of her interview with Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew Sunday on the West Block, only here on Global. Next, the African mountain gorilla's modest rebound, how the species bounced back from near extinction. More than a quarter of monitored animal species are being threatened with extinction. That's about 44,000 types of animals. And among the most fascinating of those creatures is the gorilla. Most types of the animal are classified as critically endangered. However, the subspecies of mountain gorillas is seeing its numbers slowly rebounding. Redmond Shannon reports.
On a mission through the clouds, AK-47s in hand, these are not gorilla poachers, but gorilla guides.
Yes. The gorillas have moved, are looking for food. They're following them. We're going to use another entrance on the other side.
This tour guide is named Patience, appropriate for such a delicate job.
If you hear any silverback doing like, as I'm going to do, you have to pay attention. If he does like this, like coughing, either you are nearby him, he doesn't want you to keep approaching him, he wants you to move back.
All of a sudden, further up the side of a dormant volcano, there they are. A mountain gorilla family. The silverback, his 6 females and their infants. The mountain gorilla is classified as endangered, but is the only type of gorilla not critically endangered. Its numbers across this small part of East Africa now around 1,000, up from 680 in 2008, thanks to anti-poaching patrols and the removal of snares.
When you meet them, they are rated, they're close to humans. There's something that I don't understand. I don't understand how people can come to kill these beautiful animals related to humans. Genetically, we are the same.
So close, they can catch a cold from us, which can even be fatal. Our understanding of them is thanks to people like Patience and conservationist Diane Fossey. Her 1985 murder thought to be linked to her work against poachers.
Yeah, yes, it's time for having break, for socializing. They have like a biological clock. By this time, all gorillas, they break for digesting what they eat in the morning and socializing.
The relative peace and stability in Rwanda is an important factor in helping them thrive. In the neighbouring Democratic Republic of the Congo, plagued by conflict, their safety and future is less assured. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And that's Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Farah Nasser. On behalf of our whole crew, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is the Ring in Montreal, Quebec. We love seeing Your Canada, so please keep emailing us your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Until we're together again tomorrow, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.